President Trump gave a political speech.
The broader message, he's trying to rally the base there at CPAC.
People get complacent. You just won, and now you're happy and you're complacent. Don't be complacent.
The conservatives at CPAC yesterday are behind this president. They're rallying, and they understand what's at stake in November.
Breaking overnight, 4 Broward County deputies reportedly waited outside the school while the gunman opened fire.
The Democrats are being totally unresponsive. They don't want to do anything about DACA. Frankly, you better elect more Republicans, folks, or it'll never happen.
Paul Manafort maintaining his innocence as he's hit with new charges by the special counsel. Manafort also blasting his former partner, Rick Gates, for pleading guilty.
It means absolutely nothing for making any sort of case about collusion with Russia.
You don't mind if I go off script a little bit? Try like hell to hide that bald spot, folks. Hanging in there, right? Together, we're hanging in.
That's the president that we all know. It's the president that people down deep in their gut, they really, really like.
That's the song they pick when they deliberately don't want T Swift again.
He's mad. He wants his Taylor Swift.
We're being put on a Taylor Swift diet, apparently. We only get it once an hour, but, you know, it's
once a show. We're not once an hour.
Yeah, right, once a show.
Maybe once a day, maybe tomorrow. We can look forward to T Swift, more T Swift.
Well, hopefully that happens.
You'll have to write our producers. Let them know. We need more of it. Well, anyway, we have a busy day today. A lot of news.
And overnight, there was really a disturbing report. This update on the deadly school shooting in Parkland, Florida. We're now learning not just 1, but 4 Broward County deputies waited outside the school while the gunman opened fire, of course, inside that school, tragically taking 17 lives. Now, this is according to a report by CNN. Sources familiar with the Coral Springs Police Department, another jurisdiction, their officers ran inside the building, did what they were trained to do to try and stop the shooter and eventually bring him down. Again, this according to CNN.
And meanwhile, more details are out about the tip that the FBI failed to investigate. The Wall Street Journal reporting the anonymous woman called the agency more than a month before the shooting, saying she feared Nikolas Cruz would, quote, get into a school and just shoot the place up. I know he's going to explode.
And this is when you think about how this narrative has gone, and the most important part of it is the tragic. While facts are changing, and we've got to get and stick with facts and not rhetoric, what has not changed is that tragically 17 people died in this tragedy, but a lot of people jumped to conclusions at the beginning before the facts came in.
Yes, well, we're going to bring in Geraldo because I think he, like so many of us who are parents, the more details that come in, the more, to quote the father of one of the slain teenagers, the more pissed off we are getting.
Geraldo, what are you thinking about this morning when you hear all of this pouring in?
It's so very distressing, Ed. You have the failure of adults, the grown-ups sworn to protect these children at every level failing. You had the 911 calls about this kid that were repeated and increasingly urgent and totally ignored. Or if the cops went to the house, they didn't find sufficient cause to act. Then you had the FBI dropping those 2 very credible tips. And now this. Now you had the school resource officer, the armed and specifically assigned Broward deputy Scott Peterson, based outside the school. He doesn't go in when the firing starts. And now you have this report that you've been referencing that, if true, is even more alarming. The first 3 Broward deputies on the scene. There's Scott Peterson outside. The next 3 Broward deputies come, and they also they draw their weapons and take cover behind cement barricades. It really, you know, ever since Columbine, ever since 1999, the drill is if a cop here's an active shooter inside a school, knowing how vulnerable the children are, knowing how scant the window of opportunity to stop the shooter. The ethos is to rush in, go in, Figure out what's happening later, but get to the scene. Don't stay outside. Don't be most concerned about your own safety. Save the children. And then there's not only stopping the active shooter, there's also kids bleeding out.
Right.
I mean, with a weapon like an AR-15, the savage high-velocity rounds hitting these kids, the president described the wounds that he saw in the hospital. Their arms were torn off. I mean, they're bleeding out. You know, a minute is life and death in this case. It's very, very distressing.
Geraldo, you saw the CNN town hall. In that town hall, Sheriff Israel was very quick to point the blame at Marco Rubio, at Dana Lash, at the NRA, and yet he sat there knowing what we now know his own officers did not do.
You know, I've been working with the Broward Sheriff since the 80s. I did a program called American Vice with them. I know the department very well. This is a grievous disappointment to me. I think that when the analysis is done of the performance, of the combat performance of the Broward Sheriff's Department in this case, it will be woefully viewed by even objective observers. This was pathetic. By all accounts, this was not, you know, we've been you know, so accustomed to hearing how our GIs or our first responders grab the flag and charge into the action, or they go into the rubble, or they go into the fire as our firefighters do. This seems the opposite. This seems, you know, a coffee and donut kind of department, more used to just getting by and piling up overtime and not really risking an awful lot. Here, 17 of the most fragile constituents of these cops perished at the hand of a lunatic kid gone crazy. It's just very, very distressing.
Geraldo, President Trump weighed in at CPAC talking about the NRA and talking about strengthening background checks. Take a listen to what he had to say.
There's nobody that loves the Second Amendment more than I do, and there's nobody that respects the NRA. They're friends of mine. They backed us all. They're great people. They're patriots. But they're great people. But we really do have to strengthen up, really strengthen up background checks. We have to do that.
Geraldo, what do you think about what he's saying there?
Well, I think that he's absolutely right. I mean, here's a kid who was visited 39 times. I mean, how does this kid, who's lost his parents, who's adrift, who's the subject of all these 911 calls and all these FBI tips, and still he can go buy a gun? It doesn't make any sense. You know, they look and see if he has a criminal record, no criminal record. Does he have a driver's license and ID that proves he's 18 years of age? Okay, so you can buy an AR-15. It just doesn't make any sense. There's no... you know, this is the Second Amendment gone crazy. I think the president is absolutely right about background checks, but there's much more than that. I really do believe that this juvenile assault weapons ban that the president has talked about is crucially necessary. It won't eliminate the problem. It would have stopped this particular kid, though, and I think we've got to take small steps and we've got to be brave. And I think that the president was very brave in bringing up the raising of the age from 18 to 21 in front of that crowd at CPAC. The president... It was a tour de force, let's face it. I mean, he's a great speaker. He's very compelling. That crowd adores him. And I think that this is the president, just like it was the unlikely Nixon who opened up China, the hardline president opened up China. I think that President Trump will be the president who gets meaningful reforms and stops and with the help of people like Governor Rick Scott at the state level, I think that this will be done. They will be able to resist the overwhelming, almost irresistible pressure that the NRA can apply when people want to cut down on so-called gun rights.
We are going to see if he's the person who could say, look, I respect and love the NRA, I love and respect the Second Amendment, but I want sensible reforms here on background, whether he's a leader who can bridge that divide. But the other question now on another big issue he talked about is immigration, Geraldo. And here's what he said at CPAC about trying to bring together these warring factions.
The Senate Democrats and the House Democrats have totally abandoned DACA. They don't even talk to me about it. They have totally abandoned it. It is Republican because we want to do something about DACA, get it solved after all these years. The Democrats are being totally unresponsive. They don't want to do anything about DACA. I'm telling you, and it's very possible that DACA won't happen, and it's not because of the Republicans. It's because of the Democrats. And frankly, you better elect more Republicans, folks, or it'll never happen.
Geraldo, I love how he's reframing this to tell the truth, that it is Republicans who want DACA and not liberals. You spoke with the president last week about this issue. What say you?
There were two things the president wanted to talk about at our dinner at Mar-a-Lago last Saturday night, a week ago today. One was gun control and the response, the appropriate response to what happened in the Parkland massacre. The other was DACA. The other was immigration. And he is, and expressed to me how frustrated he was with Chuck Schumer and the Democrats in terms of negotiation. What I suggested, and this is me speaking now, not the president, what I suggested is rather than having an omnibus kind of approach to this negotiation with the DREAM Act kids, and you remember he wanted a four-pronged system. He wanted an end to chain migration. He wanted E-Verify and other strengthenings. And then he also said that he wanted the wall, obviously, and in exchange for that, he'd give 1.8 million DACA kids a pathway to citizenship. I said, Mr. President, make it simple. Just get your wall, which was the central tenet of your entire campaign, the wall along the southern border, get the $25 billion in a trust fund over 5 years, whatever it is, you guys negotiate that. So it's the wall, and now give the 1.8 kids a reprieve. Keep it simple. And is there anyone you can talk to about it? He took it as he did the age limitation on weapons. He took it under advisement. I wouldn't be surprised, despite his harsh tones at CPAC, that next week you see a simplified, a stripped down, a skinny DACA compromise, because we are running out of time.
Yep. It's true. But Geraldo, if you don't close those other loopholes, you're going to have another DACA wave every 7 years. Anyway, thanks for your insight. Straight from the president's conversation with you, right to our viewers. Thanks a lot, Geraldo.
Thanks, Geraldo.
Appreciate it.
Okay. Turning now to your headlines. An armed woman is behind bars after ramming her van into a security barrier at the White House. The Secret Service saying Jessica Ford was carrying a pistol when she intentionally did the act. They've arrested Ford twice before trying to climb the White House fence in 2017. Police believe she could be mentally ill. At the time, the president was finishing up a press conference at the White House with Australian Prime Minister Malcolm Turnbull. Later tweeting, "Thank you to the great men and women of the United States Secret Service for a job well done." A former NFL player detained by police after posting this disturbing photo. The image posted by Jonathan Martin showing a gun, ammo, and the names of former teammates and his high school, which was forced to close when the post went public. The Los Angeles private school will reopen on Monday. Martin has reportedly been released from custody, and it's unclear if he'll face charges. In 2013, the NFL ruled that Martin was harassed by his Miami Dolphins teammates. Turning to extreme weather, torrential rain expected to slam the South and the Midwest, where tens of millions of people are already under flood watches for the weekend. Dangerous rising waters in Louisville, Kentucky. Officials expecting the Ohio River to crest at nearly 35 feet, the second highest level in 50 years. And in Chicago, authorities rescuing a horse after its barn flooded. The crew eventually wrangling the pony to safety. And those are your headlines.
All right. So the horse got out. Good.
He got it.
Coming up, if former President Obama gives a speech, but the press can't report what he said, did it actually happen?
Shh. And conservatives pack into CPAC for day 3. We will take you there, where the action is just heating up. Next. Day 3 of CPAC now officially underway in Maryland.
And Peter Doocy is live at National Harbor with what we can expect on the final day. Hey, Peter.
Griff and Ed, as conservatives nationwide wrestle with what kind of gun reform or changes to gun laws they might be comfortable with, President Trump came to CPAC to try to reassure them that things like beefing up background checks or raising the minimum age to buy a rifle